Good. Hey everybody.
Hi.
So I'm Bob from Sumo Heavy, and today we're talking about data analysis because we take on a lot of projects, and something we notice is that almost everybody has all this stuff coming into their site: customers, products, all this information coming in, all this information going out, and they're not doing anything with it. And we're going to kind of take away some of the creepiness that people think about it, and we're going to walk through it. So for merchants and developers, do you really know your customers? When somebody asks you who's your customer, you think about who's my overall customer, who's always coming to me. But do you know the individuals? And it's something to really think about. Can you pull out one customer out of your database and easily pull up any information about them that you want to think about, that you could sell them something better? Probably not. Probably not. And it's just not something that's out there all the time, and there's not just one way to do it. It's not a magical extension. It's not Google Analytics. So, like I said, pick somebody from your database and tell me if you can, think of everything about them: their age, their gender, if they have kids, if they're married, where they live, who they are. And it's all scattered throughout all your information sets, but you might not have it all in one place. And there are some things that do this for you. You might think of, like, if you have a NetSuite or an ERP or something like that, but that's still going to give you a limited set, and you need a lot of other power behind that as well. And something else that's important is to always be on the same page in your company. So if you ask somebody in marketing and you ask a developer the same question about the customer base: who are my customers, who is this customer, are you going to get the same answer? And we see this big gap all the time. And then the final question is, do you listen to your customers? And so we're going to help you kind of think about these three things and how you can solve problems and better sell to your customers, and know a little bit more about who's going to come to your site in the future. So I want to talk a little bit about aggregate versus raw data. Anybody here who has a site, or anybody here who's built a site, has Google Analytics. And you can go in and you can see how many pages you've gotten, how many events have been clicked. You can see some order data that comes through, and you can see all this sampled data. And even if you're sampling at 100%, it's still aggregate. You can't pick one data point out of that and know anything about what's going on. It's all summarized for you, and that's part of their business model, and it's part of why something like Google Analytics is free. And it's a great tool, and it can really give you some insight. But the problem is it can only give you some insight. And then we think about raw data. And traditionally, 10 years ago, it was very expensive. Because 10 years ago, to have trillions of records and store all of your clickstream data, it was nearly impossible for you to do as a business owner, because something as simple as the price of a hard drive. Now we have things like AWS and S3 and all these different tools available to us, where we can build these enormous databases that we never need to insert to again, only once. And we can do it for pennies on the gigabyte. And so there's a big split between them. Aggregate data is summarized by nature. You can see all of the data about someone who ordered, a group of you who ordered a product. You can see how a product sold day to day. You can see how many orders came in over a course of an hour and time plot that. You cannot analyze individuals. So if you go into Google Analytics or a number of tools like that, you're not going to see Joe Smith ordered 8 times from me, and here's the product set that he got. Here's what his family members bought, and his kids and his wife. And then the other thing is, even if exporting is available, it's generalized. So you're going to get that summarized data output, which can be helpful in some ways, but in other ways it's not as useful as having raw data. So the benefits to having raw data: every line of data, everything that anybody ever clicked, anything you could possibly track. You can, if you have it stored somewhere in a standardized format, you can import it to almost any tool, any data analysis tool that you can get your hands on. They'll all connect to either MySQL or a JSON store like Mongo, or Amazon's warehousing tools. You have the power to analyze the individual, because one of the things that you notice when you go online is, no matter what online store you go to, the only differentiators are that it's easier to use or it's prettier. And those things don't really matter. What matters is that you're getting the customers the product and the information they need. You can have the ugliest site. For years, look at Amazon, one of the most powerful sites on the internet, selling the most product. Because it's getting you the information that you need and the products that you want, even though they have millions and millions of products. And you don't need to be a behemoth to be able to do that. And so by having the power to analyze the individual, you can use that to find patterns in individuals and then market specifically to them without them even noticing. You can migrate your data from place to place. I can tell you one of the things we're doing with one of our clients is their database is quickly growing and they have about 85 integrations. And the problem is every time someone historically in the organization would write a new integration, it's another Magento module, it's another thing to hook into, it's another observer, it's another queue. And so what we're doing is we're condensing all that down to a few data stores and a few queues that are external to Magento. So there's one module that pushes all that data to these various stores, and then their 85 tools can read directly from those. Another benefit is you can own your data. Some of these tools that are out there that are aggregate tools, they're great until you want to move to something else or use an additional tool and you can't get that data historically. Somebody can't revisit your site if you don't have those logs, you can't get their information. And then the other advantage is you can use multiple tools with one data store. Maybe you want to push things out to RethinkDB, maybe you want to use Looker, maybe you want to use Chartio, and you want to use these tools in different ways. You'll be able to do that if you have the raw data. So then it comes to the question, what should I collect? One of the big problems that you hear about in the news now is everybody's being tracked. And it's true, everybody's being tracked, everything you do. When you walk out the door, there's a new company now that is testing out the retail space where you can rent a camera from them for $100 a month. And their software will do traffic analysis and differentiate between cars and people walking outside of your building and what they're looking at. You're being tracked, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. And the only way to not be tracked is to not use any modern tools, to live in a cave, and it's just not feasible. So you have to think about what should you collect? And the real answer is as much as you're comfortable with, and as much as your customers are comfortable with. If they're comfortable trading you information for their age, you give them a coupon for their age, their gender, how many kids they have, if they're grandparents, how many people are in their household. People have been doing it for years and years and years in magazines and newspapers and other surveys, and now more people are aware of it, so you just have to make sure that you do it in a way that's mutually beneficial. Then you have the problem of what can you collect? Depending on what space you're in, there's different regulatory standards that you may or may not be able to collect certain information. Something we've started dealing with is if you have a media site that's for children under 13, you can't collect names and ages and that sort of thing. If if you're storing credit cards, we all know you have to be really careful with that raw data. So you have to think about what you can collect and what you should collect. And then there's gray areas. It all comes down to comfort. I'm willing to give almost any of my information away because I just don't care. A lot of people don't care. And a lot of people know that they're getting something in return for giving that information up. But every company has their own gray areas, their own comfort levels. Every customer base has their own comfort levels. And you really need to take that into consideration and really try this stuff out slowly. Introduce things one at a time. Do more than A/B experiments. Really collect as much as you can and do what you can with it to get people the stuff that they need. So I want to spend a few minutes on analysis tools. There's a few different things that we put together that I just want to talk about, and no, we'll do a demo in a few minutes of something simple. There are some really simple tools, like one that we're going to demo for you called Parse. Parse is for event tracking analysis, and it has APIs and SDKs for almost anything you can think of. JavaScript, iOS, Android, PHP, Ruby. You can define your own schemas, push your own data out. It started out as a tool to build backends for your app, so you didn't have to do any website development to store all that stuff. Then we have something like Snowplow Analytics. Snowplow can be a complete replacement for Google Analytics if you have the tools to build it on. There's trackers that can be JavaScript or PHP. There's data stores. There's a 5-step process in gathering data, storing it, analyzing it, and then MapReducing it out to other tools. RethinkDB is a new database, and this is a JSON store that deals with real-time data. So it solves a lot of problems that Mongo here, we'll talk about in a second, has. And it has to do with architectural things like auto-sharding your data. When you introduce new servers, it'll take your data. If you have one server, it's all there. If you have 2 servers, when you introduce that new server, they'll talk to each other and automatically split your data up. And then it has relationships and defined schemas all in a JSON store, and it's really handy. Then we have MongoDB, which is fairly traditional. It's a schemaless JSON store that a lot of people are using now for queuing, for storing data that we're going to write once. And then we have Amazon Web Services, which in its own right can be really interesting too and can drive all these things. Snowplow integrates really heavily with Amazon Web Services and things you can do. You can store things in S3, so we store a lot of data in S3 for about, I think, 0.9 cents per gigabyte. You can use MapReduce tools, you can analyze your data, and you can get things out of it for marketing. So I'm going to take a couple minutes and just show you guys something really simple, because you have to start somewhere. So let me load this up. And what we're going to do is show you some real-time events happening from a Magento store that push out to Parse, as long as our internet's okay. All right, so we're going to start at Magento. And we're just going to go to just a store with one product. And here you see we just have the home page. No big deal. Let's go to a category. And then we'll go to a product. And then we'll add that product to our cart. Now, it's running locally with no cache or anything like that, so we don't expect it to be fast, but what we want to do is look at what's happening here. So, as we do that, we're calling this tool Parse. Parse is free. For a certain amount, it'll get you by for a good while. We have production apps running on the free version. And what we're doing is we're just calling custom events. You don't have to know any schema, you don't have to know what you're pushing out. You can just define it and push it, and then track it later. So there's a few important key aspects here. First is the event name. Every event that you push has a name, and so we have things here like add to cart, category view, product view, and then we have dimensions. And so dimensions are the aspects of that event that define what was being pushed with it. So we have, it's hard because it's a small screen here, but you'll see customer ID, entity ID, the name of the product. We have the session. So this happens in real time, and you can build tools on top of Parse to analyze in real time. Doing something like this takes about 15 minutes to build, and you can put it on any of your sites and have access to real-time event data. And you can do this, it was just 3 small observers, one for registration, one to tie into add to cart, product view, and this all happens in the background. So you could add some power to it to queue these if you have a real high volume site, or for a smaller site, just leave it as is. Now the great thing about a tool like Parse is it's easy to get into. It's easy to get into and it's easy to get out of. So you're getting into a free tool that gives you data analysis, that gives you real-time event tracking, and lets you build on top of it. They have APIs and SDKs. You could build apps that talk to it. You could build a desktop app. You could hook something like Chartio up to it. You could hook anything up that can talk to a REST API up to it, something like Clipfolio. And you can analyze all this in real time. So in about a day's work now, you can build a real-time event system and dashboard for your clients that you could talk to with Ajax and have it running, and that's something that people see a lot of power in. It could be really helpful for their business. So some of the things we can look at here are, this can grow. This can grow really fast, and you have access to all of it. So if you want to see a customer's time plot, you can do that. You can go into, there's some time plot settings. You can say, how has this customer visited my site over a course of time? How is this product, this individual product, and all of the people, what are some patterns about this product and all the people that buy it? And this here, you can push all of the attributes into. So we know Magento is really strong on attributes. We know that you can have age in here, gender, description. Yep, you good. Let's keep that on. Any product attributes, any order attributes, any customer product orders, page views, customer registration. And so this is something we're really trying to get our clients to think about at every scale. Whether somebody's small, they might get a couple hundred orders a day, or somebody's really big and they might get a couple hundred orders a second. Tools like this are going to give you access to look at the things the way you want to look at them, and think about them the way you want to think about them, and kind of give you a lot more power than just being stuck with things that are aggregated for you. So hopefully, somebody found this as interesting as I do. It's something we're doing on a daily basis now, and something that's really helped a lot of our clients out and helped us learn a lot. So that's pretty much all I got. We'll post this online, and I'll take any questions anybody has of things they're trying to do or stuck on or want to do. That's pretty much it.
Can you show how you took this data and made it into something useful?
We can't, only because it's so specific to the clients. I can tell you some of the things that we've done with it. So we do some work with a company that deals with rentals. And one of the things they didn't know about their customers, they couldn't tell us the simplest thing about their customers. We have all this raw data. They had it from their back-end systems. We pulled it out. What they didn't know was, how long is an average rental for? And so for those guys, what we did was we took their raw data. It was something like 180 million records. Put them into CSVs and then imported them into R. And R is a tool for doing statistical analysis. And we did a basic histogram. And so we took these 3 years of data and looked at it, and what we found out was the longest rental on average is 5 minutes. So people are renting these products for 5 minutes and then returning them. The way this became even more useful was we wanted to know the people that are using the product. What are they doing with it? When are they taking it? When are they using it? And what are they doing with it? And so what we did was we integrated their iOS and Android apps with Parse. And so that's where it gets really interesting. Because what we do is throughout the entire day, we'll have tools that hook into this. Something like Klipfolio. And what Klipfolio does is, have you ever heard of Chartio or Looker? So they're expensive. They're like $700 a month per query. Klipfolio is near real time. It's $20 a user, and you can build these dashboards with data sets and everything that can talk to almost any backend you could think of, or at least a backend you could tie into. And so we're using this a lot now to help clients build real-time dashboards, because it's easy to get into, for the smaller ones. And for the bigger ones, it's easy for them to change and have lots of different dashboards and stuff. And so we'll hook this up to the REST APIs for Parse directly. And then you can use their tools inside of it to build charts and stuff like that. And I think it's near real time. It's like 15-minute intervals it'll update.
Is that a performance hit though, to do in real time?
No. If it gets to the point where it's a performance hit, so the thing is, we're pushing data out to Parse. Generally Parse and Snowplow Analytics. And so once it's in your data store, you can read from it as much as you want, and it won't affect your site. Because you're just reading off of the...
It's not reading directly from the MySQL database.
Right, exactly. And you could if you wanted to. Some folks we have with a fifth and a sixth DB slave that they have like everything read from. Back there?
So, have you used Kibana and Elasticsearch, and if you have, how does that compare to this data set?
Yeah, so we have a pretty big client on Kibana and Elasticsearch. We use them in different ways. So for Kibana, we are using it to monitor a lot of infrastructure. These guys have a lot of stuff out on AWS. They have a lot of stuff on dedicated servers in different warehouses, around the country. And so what we do is we feed a lot of our logs into it and then use Logstash, and we use Kibana in that way to kind of show us, spikes here and there and look into them. And then we'll use this for more on the business side, because this, to be able to have your data store and have an executive come to you and say, hey, I need a report of like customers that were shopping on Tuesdays that were male 34 to 82, I don't know, in January through March, you can do that with this in a couple hours. And, but you can also connect to other stores like, I don't think Portfolio connects to Elasticsearch, but it'll do Redshift, it'll do MySQL, PostgreSQL, anything with a REST interface. So you might be able to get stuff out of Elasticsearch over REST with it. But it's been good in that way, yeah. Cool. Anybody else?
How are you pushing this data? Are you using Ajax to push it synchronously or doing it in queuing?
So that's a good question. So one thought that might come to mind for a lot of people is, why can't I just use marketing tags? And so this is actually one of the reasons that we've gotten into this more heavily. We have a client that has like 85 marketing tags, and they're using Telium to manage them all. Telium's like a Google Tag Manager container kind of deal. And what we noticed is that even though the container is async, a lot of the tags don't load until like 4 or 5 seconds afterwards, after they're painted by the backend. And then they use all these jQuery selectors to like pull data off the page and insert them into the tag and then re-render things and push them out. And so one of the goals we've been tasked with is to take as many of their marketing tags as they can that don't change over a significant amount of time and build out backend processes for them to push out. So what we're doing is, traditionally for most of our clients, we're pushing this out from the backend. And if it's fast enough, we'll either push it out with an observer, or we'll have a queue that observer pushes out to, and then use like SNS to push them out to parse. So this, if you're marketing tag heavy or beacon heavy, tools like this are something to consider, because everybody wants to see your site work fast, and marketing tags just have so many issues. And I'm sure if there's any vendors here that are doing that, they're probably going to choke me for saying that. But tag vendors, be faster. If you have a tag that takes 3, 4, 5 seconds to load, even though it's async, those people are going to leave your pages. If you have somebody on your checkout page and you need to scrape that page for information with jQuery and push it out through some marketing tag, nobody's going to sit on your page for 3 seconds. Nobody's going to sit on your page for 2 seconds. So if you can't make it happen with that tag, I would say, and we generally hit for double-digit milliseconds, then we'll opt to move it to the back end. And thankfully, a lot of vendors are starting to open up their APIs now instead of using tags, because they've recognized this issue. Omniture is a big one we've been working with. Anybody else? Anybody else? We're good? All right, thanks.